Welcome back to the final installment of our three-part series. I am Tanya from 1=1. When we left off, the newly independent United States was in crisis. The American people had fought a revolution to secure their natural rights, but their first attempt at a government, the Articles of Confederation, was entirely too weak to function. The central government couldn't raise taxes, couldn't regulate commerce, and couldn't keep the peace. They had successfully escaped a tyrant, but they were stumbling into anarchy. In the summer of 1787, delegates from across the states gathered in Philadelphia. Their original mission was just to tweak the Articles of Confederation. Instead, they completely scrapped it. They decided to build an entirely new framework from the ground up, the United States Constitution. They faced a massive philosophical paradox. How do you give a government enough teeth to actually govern without giving it so much power that it turns tyrannical? Their solution was a masterclass in structural engineering. Instead of trusting that leaders would simply be virtuous, the framers assumed that human beings are naturally ambitious and flawed. Therefore, they divided the power of the federal government into three distinct branches: the legislative branch, Congress, to write the laws; the executive branch, the presidency, to enforce the laws; the judicial branch, the Supreme Court, to interpret the laws. By giving each branch the power to check the others, they ensured that ambition would counteract ambition. No single person or group could consolidate enough power to become tyrannical. But when the draft of the Constitution was sent to the states for approval, a massive outcry erupted. People read this brilliant structural blueprint and asked one crucial question: where are the rights we fought a war for? The Declaration of Independence had promised life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But this new constitution didn't explicitly guarantee freedom of speech or freedom of religion or protection against unlawful imprisonment. The architects of the Constitution argued that listing specific rights was actually dangerous. They worried that if they wrote down a list of protected rights, future governments might argue that unlisted rights weren't protected at all. But the people refused to ratify the Constitution without a guarantee. The compromise was the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments added to the Constitution. These amendments explicitly handcuffed the new federal government by laying out a specific list of protections. The First Amendment guaranteed the freedom of religion, speech, the press, assembly, and the right to petition the government. The Second protected the right of the people to keep and bear arms. The Third prevented the government from forcing citizens to house soldiers in peacetime. The Fourth guarded against unreasonable searches and seizures of property. The Fifth ensured due process of law, protecting citizens from self-incrimination and double jeopardy. The Sixth guaranteed the right to a speedy, public, and fair criminal trial with legal counsel. The Seventh secured the right to a jury trial in civil disputes. The Eighth prohibited the government from imposing excessive bail or inflicting cruel and unusual punishment. The Ninth directly addressed the framers' fears about writing rights down, stating that just because a right isn't explicitly listed here doesn't mean the people don't still possess it. And finally, the 10th Amendment firmly drew a line in the sand, stating that any power not specifically given to the federal government is reserved entirely for the states or the people themselves. The Bill of Rights is the philosophical bridge that connects the structural machinery of the Constitution directly back to the soaring promises of the Declaration of Independence. Today, the Constitution remains the supreme law of the land. But that doesn't mean the philosophical arguments ended in the 18th century. In fact, the fiercest debates in American politics today center on exactly how to read it. Because the document is over 230 years old, Legal scholars and citizens are deeply divided into two main camps. On one side is originalism. Originalists argue that the Constitution must be interpreted exactly as it was understood by the public at the time it was written and ratified. To an originalist, the meaning of the text is fixed. If society wants to change how the government operates, they shouldn't ask a judge to reinterpret the words. They should use the amendment process to change the document itself. On the other side is the concept of the living Constitution. Proponents of this view argue that the framers intentionally wrote the Constitution using broad, flexible principles like equal protection or unreasonable search, so that it could adapt to changing times. To them, the Constitution is a dynamic framework that must evolve to make sense in a modern world of the internet, automatic weapons, and global commerce. The relationship between the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution is the story of an ideal and its execution. The Declaration told the world why a free society should exist. The Constitution provided the how. And whether you view that blueprint through the lens of originalism or a living constitution, the American experiment remains exactly what it was in 1787. An ongoing, passionate argument about how to balance the power of the state with the liberty of the individual. To many, the American system today is still the most efficient in guaranteeing the people the freedoms they are entitled to. Thank you for listening, and do like, share, and subscribe.